The nature of work has evolved from basic tasks to exponentially more complex challenges. This evolution has required a corresponding shift in how we manage work, leading us to three industrial revolutions. Now, the fourth industrial revolution, driven by AI, is upon us. What sets this revolution apart is that from the very first time, there are scenarios where human workers may no longer be needed. How far reaching this will impact humanity will be something that we'll have to discover. While many see AI as a shiny solution to replace Agile in solving corporate challenges, I argue that Agile holds critical answers that would be wise not to ignore. Unfortunately, misconceptions about Agile could leave us unprepared for the disruptive changes AI will soon bring to the workplace. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Agile for AI. I'm Sean, and I'm thrilled to have you here. This is a space where we can openly discuss Agile and explore how AI presents both threats and opportunities to build a better future for humanity. I'm passionate about Agile, and it has profoundly improved my life. I am grateful for the opportunity that you're giving me to share those experiences with you, and I'm excited to hear your thoughts so that together we can strengthen Agile as a trusted ally in these changes times. Today's live stream will have three parts. I'll start with a 30-minute presentation on today's topic and open the chat for discussions. And finally, I'll wrap up with some closing thoughts. So let's dive in. I'd like to take a moment and walk all of us down history lane. I'm not very good with history. I don't particularly enjoy it. However, I have found that it's really important to take a step back, take a look at where we come from, because that gives us some clues into where we're heading. If we ignore the past, well, how do we know that we're not repeating it? Things that we should know, that we should have been able to prevent. So, with that in mind, I'd like you to take a moment and just maybe close your eyes, just listen to me for a few minutes, and try to bring yourself back in time. Let's start at a moment where work was probably very difficult. Talking antiquity, what do you see in ancient times? What type of work did people do? How were the working conditions? Take a moment to think about that. When I look back, I consider those difficult working conditions as something that was part of society that was driven by a lot of the harshness of the conditions that humanity was experiencing, that these were the early stages of figuring out what we needed to do. Work, work can be very simple. There are simple things that we need to do, and work can be very complex. And perhaps in those early ages, there was a lot of simple work that needed to be done. Perhaps the things could be figured out by a small group of people and just simply communicating to others, hey, get this done, move this rock over here from to over there. Maybe that's all that was necessary. That's probably true. And in that kind of situation where the work was simple and conveying to people what needed to be done was also simple, maybe that's where command and control made a lot of sense. Why overcomplicate it? We need to move a bunch of rocks from point A to point B. Get it done. That seems simple. Now, I want to be fair and I want to acknowledge that there is some discrepancy as to how much forced labor was used in the early stages of humanity. There is some thought that a lot of the workforce may have been filled by highly devotional people who really literally devoted their lives to the work that they were doing. And it didn't matter that it was particularly harsh and complex and difficult, hard upon them, but this was what they wanted to do. And there is evidence to show us that many of those workers were actually treated very well. They were doing incredibly difficult work and they were treated very well. And we also know that there was a lot of forced labor. So It is part of our history. It is part of humanity's history. And we need to acknowledge that. And when that was happening, as I mentioned, command and control probably made sense. And that stayed with us for a long time. The type of work that we were doing aligned itself to that way of doing things. So I'm going to fast forward us. This was kind of the first picture on the thumbnail, as maybe a lot of harshness, maybe a lot of difficulty, and simple things that needed to be done. And now we start making things more complicated. And this is important. It's the complexity of the work, the things that we need to do, and how we approach this. As we increase that, also becomes more complex how we manage them. These things go hand in hand. Keep that in mind. So we're now going to bring us to the first industrial revolution, where I'm talking about the 1760s to 1840s. And what characterizes this space is that of bringing into the workforce the concepts of mechanization, steam power, the rise of factories. This is a shift from the very individual small shop type of work into coming together to all of us being a part of this bigger thing that we're doing that is delivering the products and the services that we're creating at this early time. It was highly planned. There was a lot of preparation that was needed in order to do this work. It was big, and it was difficult putting together, and then executing it was aided by technology, and still required a lot of very harsh working conditions that people endured. If we speed ahead a little bit more, and we look at the second industrial revolution, now we're talking about the 1870s and 1914s. This is where mass production, electricity, and advanced machinery entered the stage. And this really increased the complexity and the cost associated with delivering products, making and delivering products. So as we started incorporating machines into the workplace, there were concerns about how to manage people in context of all of these machines. And at that point, we didn't know. We didn't know if people were part of the machine. Were they an extension of the machine? Were they separate from the machine? How did humans fit into this picture? And it's at this point, it was in the late 1800s, that Taylorism arose. This is the work from Frederick Winslow Taylor's work. And what he introduced was standardization, the concept of standardization, time and motion studies, task specialization, and efficiency focus. What he did was he introduced a very scientific, very deliberate study of the work that people were doing and how they were doing it and what it took in order to get the work done. And he was looking for ways to simplify things. I want to be very clear that a huge motivation of what he was doing was to increase the profits that companies were making and reduce the costs to deliver those profits. So there was definitely a financial and economic interest in this. And he was very deliberate in incorporating the human factor into that equation. And this to me is really very, very important. It's critical. To me, it was one of those moments in history where we could have gone one way and we went a different way. And it was Taylor who did it. Again, I'm walking you through history, and I'd like you to, again, try to picture yourself in those times. I think that if we were to bring Taylor today and we put him in the workforce, we would see a micromanager of a dimension hard to believe. I think. I don't know. I never met the man. I have no idea. However, based on what we know and based on how we react to him today, whenever we want to refer to something in the workplace that we don't like because it's too controlling, it's too mechanistic, this is Taylorism. No, we invoke that name. So there's that flavor to it. However, if we look at it from his perspective at his time, Remember what I said, it could have been very possible for people in trying to figure out how human beings fit into these new machines that were being brought to the workplace as just another part of the machine, nothing else. And if that had happened, maybe the working conditions would have deteriorated significantly for humans. Maybe would truly have been treated just as another piece of the machine, disposed just as easily and banged on whenever we didn't perform the way that was expected. I don't know. But maybe that's the way they would have gone, and it didn't. It didn't because Taylor introduced this concept of improving the life, the working conditions, and the living standards of workers at the time. This was critically important. Human beings were not forgotten. The workers were not forgotten. They were part of the equation that he created. So in putting this together, um, because he was mindful enough to inject that human element into how we manage the workforce. This may be a little controversial, and I'm not sure that a lot of agile coaches would agree with me. However, I view Taylor as really the great grandfather of agile. Because without him introducing that mindfulness, maybe we would have gone a completely different route that wouldn't have included humans. And then we would have ended up in a very different place. So put it out for thought. Maybe he is the great grandfather of Agile. Don't know. So fast forwarding a little bit, we're now entering the early, so we're still in the early 1900s. So in the period of 1930 to 1950s, this is when lean was introduced as part of the Toyota production system. It was popularized later on in the 1980s, 1990s, and it focuses on waste reduction, continuous improvement, which in Agile we call it Kaizen, just-in-time production, which emphasizes avoiding excess in inventory, for example, that eventually translates into waste. Again, there's a really big focus on waste reduction. And just like Taylor did, so up to that point, it really is an evolution, a enhancement, a progression of Taylor's work, which fortunately also included the perspective of workers. And lean incorporates into its mindset respect for workers. So the good news is that when I look back in history, I see that we were on a path that continued incorporating the human element into the work and how we manage the work. I think that's really good news. And from that perspective, the people at Toyota, the leaders of Toyota at the time, who were championing this way of thinking and this way of working, they were responding appropriately to the business needs that they had. At the time, they needed to increase the efficiency, reduce their costs, very similar to the trend that had been happening. And they did it in a way that still included humans. Remember lean, when we talk about lean, there's a lot of efficiency involved in that. I'm going to come back to that point. Lean has five principles, just to touch on those so you're aware, where also we see evidence of this human element not being forgotten and being included. And it starts off by defining value. When Lean talks about defining value, it's talking about how does the customer perceive value. It's not talking about how within the company, company administrators define value. Yes, that's important. Absolutely. And it's saying that what we consider as most valuable, most important, is what the customer defines as valuable. Once we identify what that value is, then we define what we call a value stream. This is the system, the processes, the way in which we deliver that value, what the customer wants. We create flow, which is a state, a sustainable state at which we can indefinitely deliver that value at the highest levels possible. And in order to do that, we use what we call a pull system. We recognize that when we are pushing, when we're applying pressure to systems, processes, and people, we decrease efficiency. We actually don't gain efficiency. So it recognizes that and creates a pull system so that systems, people, processes always have the bandwidth available to them to be able to perform at least to the levels that we have defined are required. And then there's always this pursuit of perfection, what we call Kaizen, always continually improving upon what we have built. We're never satisfied that it's good enough. It's good enough for now, and we're going to improve it. We're always going to make it better, better, and better. So this is where we are with the second industrial revolution. And the focus is still around increasing our efficiency, reducing costs, and we're still able to fulfill those. We have found the ways to do it. And now enters the third industrial revolution. So we've covered the first and the second images in the thumbnail. Now we're in that third one. We're entering that space. And in this, which started around the 1960s, what we're looking at is the introduction of digital technology, automation, the internet. All of these things were speeding things up. They increase humanity's ability to do not just more, but also more complex work. And that's another critical element. We're talking about not just volume of work, but the complexity of the work. It's no longer about moving a bunch of rocks from point A to point B. It's about figuring out really big puzzles, how to go about them, how to approach them. And the methods at the time that we had, the tools that we had at the time to do it, were sufficient for a while until we hit the dot-com. The dot-com was in the 1990s up to 2001. And what happened in there was that there was a huge investment made, and there was a lot of innovation. There was a lot of new ideas, and there was the appetite to fund them and to get the results. And of course, we wanted the results fast. We've created the computers, we've introduced them successfully into the workplace, and we wanted to see the benefit of that investment very, very, very quickly. So companies kept demanding, putting a lot of pressure on workers to deliver more and more and faster and better and better. And this is where everything started to burst at the seams. Up until this point, what we had were the tools that Waterfall had given us, what we call Waterfall today. And from that approach, which is very similar, very reminiscent to the industrial background that we came from, there was a lot of figuring things out, having a concrete plan up front. You can't plug a new piece of the puzzle in the middle of putting it together. You have to have the pieces before, and then you put it all, assemble it. That kind of assembly mindset was still prevalent. And Waterfall did a great job at doing that. And this is where I really want to emphasize that from a coaching perspective, my perspective is that it is a real mistake to go into companies and say that, oh, Waterfall is wrong, Waterfall is bad, Waterfall is deficient, Agile is better. And I respectfully disagree. Agile is not better. Agile is just different. It gives us a different tool set, a different mindset, a different perspective in order to accomplish more complex work. So let's be fair and let's be respectful and let's recognize the successes of Waterfall. Waterfall got us to this point. Waterfall delivered. Waterfall delivered to the world amazing, amazing products, services, capabilities that we never dreamt having before. And they got us a long, long, long way, and it will continue to get us further down, where the work aligns with what Waterfall is good for. And as we've seen, there are areas of complexity, of uncertainty, ambiguity. We just don't know. All that we know is that we need to keep moving forward. How we do it, we've never done it before. We have no idea. We're not even entirely clear on what it is that we need to do. We need to figure it out, but we can't wait to figure it out and get going because by that point, the market conditions will have changed sufficiently that it'll be too late. No, we need to act immediately. But we can't do that irresponsibly. There has to be some framework that helps us manage risk, mitigate risk. This was one of the things that I was very surprised when I was throughout my history, my evolution through Agile, as I was learning it. I reached a point where I started wondering, well, how does Agile manage risk? So I started looking for answers for that, and I looked for books, and at the time there were none. Couldn't find anything, and it was after a few years of continuing to look that I found the first book. And when I read it, that book, all that it was doing was describing agile and agile methodologies. Okay. And then I kept waiting and waiting, and any subsequent books that came around to answer the question about agile risk management were agile and agile methodologies. So I realized that that's exactly the point. Agile, just as I mentioned earlier, that lean is about efficiency, agile is about resilience. And when we're looking about resilience, adaptability, we have to consider risks. We have to evaluate what might go wrong and build that into the work that we're doing. So Agile has a lot of redundancy built into it. It has a lot of mechanisms that ensure that we're looking at something not just from a singular siloed perspective, but from a broader perspective to make sure that all the pieces fit together and do so in a way that it's sufficiently safe for the business to operate. From this perspective, I tend to look at lean and agile as two ends of a spectrum. They're not contradictory, they're not opposing, they're complementary. When we're looking at applying these approaches in companies, I think it's important to look at the industry, the nature of the work, and even within a company, the group within the company. There needs to be a balance between the two. And the balance is going to be different in each company. It needs to match the DNA of the company. It needs to match the products and services that the company is delivering. And it needs to leverage the strengths that each of these approaches delivers, what they're good at. So, for example, we may be in a primarily software development group. The company is very innovative, creating new products. The agile approach makes perfect sense. And within that company, the operations team may have needs that better align to a lean perspective. There needs to be a lot of efficiency and there needs to be a lot of responsiveness to immediate changing needs, which also speaks to agility. So it's not exclusive. I'm not suggesting that operations teams are just lean. No, I'm suggesting that they can benefit from the agile aspects and they have lean components that the rest of the company may not have. So when coming up with an approach to deliver these lean and agile perspectives, these ways of doing work within a company, we really need to be mindful and look at what is needed relative to the work to be done. Here, I establish a metaphor. This is no more complex than talking about nails and screws. What do I mean? So imagine that we're building a house. Okay, so we've got a bunch of construction workers, and we tell them that you can only build a house using nails. Does that make sense? I don't know if it makes sense. I don't think it does. And it would also be strange to tell them you can only build a house using screws. No, they need both of them. And there are tools to hammer nails and to drive screws. There's a hammer, there's a screwdriver. That's all it is. Waterfall is like nails, and you use the hammer, waterfall, when you have nails. And agile is like screws. You use the screwdriver, agile, when you have screws. We need to train the workforce on these two tools, and we need to trust them to use whichever one is best for the situation. That's the agile piece. It's trusting the workers to make that decision. And the other piece that's agile is not looking for one size fit all solutions. That mindset comes from that Tayloristic lean perspective, the waterfall approach, which conditioned us to, for the sake of the benefits of standardization, always finding the one size fits all. That's not the agile mindset. The agile mindset says, let's adapt to the situation. Let's find the best solution for the situation and do that. We need to check, do a lot of checking, and then responding to what we find. So this agile thing came about in 2001. And the timing of it to me is meaningful because this was the time when the dot-com bust came about. This is when the waterfall seams burst. And this was the response. This was a group of 17 coming together, industry leaders, software development coming together and figuring out new ways, new tools, new processes, new approaches, and critically, the new mindset to tackle the type of work that companies were demanding. And to meet those needs, the approaches of the past were no longer sufficient. That's where it all comes about. And now, what I see heading is we're coming into this fourth industrial revolution. I want to be clear. The fourth industrial revolution actually started in the 2010s. So we've been on it, and arguably it started long before that. But very intently in the 2010s, what happened is we started blurring the lines between the physical, the digital, the biological spheres, and we started leveraging AI, robotics, Internet of Things, biotechnology, quantum technologies to create a lot of automation and a lot of intelligent systems. This is all more visible now because of the introduction of the conversational generative AI. Now everybody can have a direct relationship, a direct access to these things. And that means that now anybody can implement them, can start incorporating them into their business. And I think that's a wonderful thing. I think that there are tremendous, tremendous opportunities that can really bring humanity to a new level, that can really uplift humanity into better and amazing ways. Really give opportunity by freeing humanity a lot of from a lot of that tedious work that we've been carrying for so long, and really allowing us to focus on the more creative aspects. So there's a lot of positive that I see. And there's also dangers that I see. I've been fortunate to work in many industries, and right now there's a lot of interest in AI and robotics, automation in the manufacturing spheres. Manufacturing, for example, one of the things that I've seen that I think is very exciting is interfaces that are monitoring, biointerfaces that are monitoring workers' vital signs in order to be able to predict situations that could be life-threatening. That's amazing. That's wonderful. If we can have leverage these technologies in a way that we can prevent deaths in the workplace because there's real danger where they're working, I think that's fantastic. And those same technologies could be used in a way that really converts the humans into just a biological cog in the machine. And this isn't just fear mongering, and this isn't just storytelling. We're already seeing evidence of this. There are, for example, coffee shops that today are measuring the performance of the workers by seconds that they spend in the delivery of the coffee. The opportunity to establish a human connection with the people that they're serving is not only not possible, it's punished, it's penalized, because this unfeeling system has graded them negatively for spending a few minutes smiling and talking to somebody. These are things that we need to really consider. There's a lot of ethical and moral implications as we implement these technologies. And positives are amazingly wonderful. I lived them myself, and I'm genuinely excited about it. Writer's block, believe me, it's a thing, it's real, and it's challenging. It doesn't matter how much you know about something. When you have to put your thoughts together in a way that you can communicate them to others, express them, whether it is in live streams like these or in writing, whatever ways, writer's block is real. And on a daily basis, I interact with AIs. And what the AI has become for me is this trusted assistant that I can bounce mm, sometimes barely formulated thoughts and sometimes almost together, but I'm just missing that one piece to put it all together. And it's right there. Do I immediately just go with whatever the AI tells me and cut and paste it? No. There's a lot of hallucinations. There's a lot of inaccuracies. No, it does require my expertise to filter that information and be able to present it in a way that is accurate and reliable. And the amount of time that it saves me is incredible. It really boosts my productivity tremendously. And when I take a step back and I look at this from the agile coaching perspective and I look at the workforce, I'm going to make a little prediction in here, and time will tell whether I was onto something or, oh boy, I was totally off the mark. One of the things that I see, for those of you who are familiar with Agile and how we do things in Agile, there's this concept of product ownership. Um, and then delivery teams. So there's somebody who focuses on what it is that we're building, and there's somebody who focuses on how we're building and how we put it together. And this largely has aligned to the divisions, the very harsh divisions that exist today between business and technology, if we're talking in technology context. There's this wall that things go over all the time. What I'm seeing is that wall coming down. I'm seeing a merging of these spaces and becoming more of a fluid spectrum. My personal experience is, for example, when I interact with the AIs and I'm creating software. And that's something that I never thought I would ever say, because from college, I made the commitment to never become a programmer. And the reason was because my personality, I knew that I would end up locked up in a room, never come out, and just be on Jolt all day and do nothing but programming. And I didn't want that life. I actually wanted to socialize. I wanted to interact with people. So I refused the software side, the development side. And today I find myself putting software together. How did that happen? Well, I'm serving as a product owner and I'm working with the AI, and together we're building it. And I know enough about coding and I know enough about QA that I can guide the AI through optimizing, improving it, and giving me exactly what I want. This is exciting. I'm genuinely excited about it. And that's a future that I would hope for humanity to get to, where our workforce is genuinely relieved from the pieces that are more mechanistic and more drudgery and more repetitive, and are freed to think creatively and bring about their full potential. I think that would be a wonderful future. And I'd like to invite you to join me in conveying that possibility. And the impetus, the thing that lit the fire for me to start this channel, was the realization that, at least from my perspective, I see two potential paths. I see the path that takes us down becoming those biological cogs in a machine, and that future bothers me. And then the path that it really frees us to accomplish amazing things together. I'd really like that to happen. And I see what Agile has brought into my life, how Agile has improved my life and my perspective, fits in very nicely because it reminds us of that human element. It is very human centristic, and it is very mindful. It has a lot of mindfulness in how we do things. And I think we need that today in order to make good choices for the future. So it's for that future that I was motivated to put this together and invite you to join me. And from that perspective, I'm really eager to hear what you think about this. What thoughts did all of this talk bring about? What kind of future do you see? Do you have concerns? Do you think that, oh, there's really nothing to be worried about? Maybe you think that this whole AI thing, oh, it's nothing. It'll just go away. I think there's a lot of hype, and there's also potential. Do you see that too? I'm really curious to hear what you have to say. So with that, I've opened the chat. If you don't see the chat available, just hit the refresh button, and you should be able to see it. And if you got any thoughts to share, please go along and share them. Hey, Jeff, thank you for being here. Interesting talk. So you talk some more about concrete ways in which think AI might incorporate into the workplace in an agile environment. So I was mentioning, thank you. So I was mentioning, I think that a first entry point, one of the ways in which it can help us is by relieving some of those repetitive tasks. There's a lot of work that people have to do. There's just a bunch of tasks. There's just things that need to be completed. And I think that in these spaces, AI can really, really, really help us. Remember that the space where AI excels at the moment is where there's clear definitions. The clearer definition, the easier for the AIs to deliver and deliver something that's meaningful and accurate. So in those spaces, I think that workers, if they have an AI working alongside with them, they'll really get the benefit, the boost. It really is like having an assistant all the time right there with you. And it's somebody that you learn to adapt with and learns to deliver in the way that you're accustomed to. Because they learn our styles. We can teach them our styles. So this is a first entry point where I think it would be very helpful for people to leverage artificial intelligence as a starting point. And as we do more of this, as we learn how to apply these technologies, then it starts freeing us up from to do other things. So thanks for that question. Good. So from that perspective, I'm still figuring things out. This is the first day putting this all together. So expect improvements and enhancements. Your feedback is very, very, very much appreciated. I really appreciate anything that you want to share with me. There's a comment area if you want to drop something in there. There's also a community space if you want to drop something there. You can reach me directly, whichever way. And your feedback is really important to me to figure out how to make this your space, how to make this a welcoming space where you feel happy to participate and you feel that your voice is heard and that you can contribute to helping us all figure this out together. As far as format, I'm thinking that at this moment I do one video every week. That's probably good enough for the moment to just figure things out. And if I have earned it, I'd appreciate tremendously your subscribes and likes. And in comments, all very, very valuable and very helpful. So unless there's anything else, just want to finish up by sharing with you some parting thoughts. That today, hopefully, I was able to present to you some important concepts that have the potential to greatly enhance the human experience in the workplace. The opportunity to shape a better future is in our hands. And having discussions around this, I think that this is the moment to do it. Much like Taylor was at a critical moment in history to help shape which path we took, and then Lean did the same. Unfortunately, they incorporated humans. I hope that we have those discussions at this moment and we remember and we include humans so that the future is a good one, a bright one for everybody. So, in whatever way makes sense to you, please keep these thoughts in mind and do everything you can to help all of us reach that future. And thank you very much for everything that you do. And I look forward to the next time. Thanks for joining me.